my zone. Let me into my zone. Please don't let me into my zone. 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 Please don't let me.
Morning, bonjour, bienvenue sur le métier de créer. I'm Seb Jonkou. Today I'm excited to introduce you to a photographer who sees the world in a unique way. A true New Yorker, a Brooklynite. He will talk about his journey and how it has influenced him. He has photographed many chefs and many cooks from around the world. You've probably seen some of his images in the press or in numerous publications. So let's meet Monsieur Clay Williams. This is Le Métier de Créer, the craft of creating, with a true portraitist. Get ready, it starts now. Bonjour Clay, welcome. Comment tu vas?
Salut Seb, how are you?
Can you introduce yourself? Who are you? Who are the Williams, please?
I am Clay Williams. I am a photographer specializing in food and drink and the people who make it, based in Brooklyn, but I am often on the road photographing outside of New York, in London, in Portugal, in South Africa last month, and Peru later this year. Just wherever the work takes me.
Okay, thank you for that. But who are the Williams? Where do you come from? What is your family? I don't know.
Sure.
Maybe there's more than one Williams.
There are plenty of us. Yes. So I am born and raised in New York. I'm a long time Brooklynite. I've been in Brooklyn since I was 9 years old. So getting close to 40 years. I don't know. What else do you want me to say?
I don't know. Okay, no, it's a perfectly good answer.
Okay. I live in Sunset Park, Brooklyn, I should say.
Yes, a nice neighborhood.
Yeah, in South Brooklyn.
So, how was your educational journey?
So it's an interesting thing. I sort of came into photography a little sideways. I studied photography in high school, or I guess secondary. I'm not sure what the equivalent is in France, but
I don't know. What age did you have?
From 14 to 18.
14 to 18. So that's the end of lycée in French. In France, quatrième, troisième. Yes, something like that.
Yeah, so I learned photography there, but then when I went to university, I sort of dropped it. It wasn't a thing that I did a lot, and so it wasn't until digital was released, was more available, I should say, that I started playing with photography again. I worked in publishing, but I was in the IT department. I was one of the tech guys, and I had to test and evaluate digital cameras, not the pro level cameras, but the point and shoots and things like that to be used in the magazine offices for replacing. They used to do Polaroids of inventory and that sort of thing, and so I got a few to evaluate, and I played with them, and after I gave my evaluation, I sort of held on to them and used them outside of work, and so about almost 10 years before the smartphone, I had a camera in my pocket already.
Do you remember which one it was?
There were a few different models, but I started with Canons pretty early on. I photograph with Canons now, Canon SLRs now, but I think it was a power shot or something along those lines. Yeah, the power shot line was what I used the most, I believe, and it sort of graduated from one to the next to get me to the 5D Mark IV that I have now. Um, yeah, so I started with that, and so I was in my 20s. It was New York. Brooklyn was becoming a scene in restaurants, in music, in art, creativity, and so I just always had a camera with me, and so I started documenting whatever I was doing and wherever I was going, and the habit of having a camera with me all the time has continued to this day.
Hmm. So it was organic, I would say. You
Yeah,
haven't decided to start a career in photography. You was doing it without knowing that you will do it. It's a good assumption, or maybe at that
yeah.
time you have already choose to be a photographer.
No, it's as you say, it was totally organic. It was one of those things. I actually came um, into doing it professionally uh, as a um, as a writer. I used to blog, and I would just, I working in the corporate world, I didn't have an opportunity to write very often, and so I started blogging like everybody else did those days.
Mm.
And some things I just post on my own site, and then I would post pictures on Flickr and other websites and on my blog, and then people would see what I was posting, and everyone was looking for somebody to cover the things that were happening. And so one thing sort of led to the other, and I started getting um, sort of a regular beat where I was being asked to write about or to photograph um, art openings and restaurant openings and music shows and that sort of thing. And it just became went from being a hobby to being sort of a side gig, but it was a thing that I enjoyed doing. So it was like that weird in between. And then and then I guess about 15 years ago now, I um I got more, like, I became a regular contributor to a couple different websites, and that focused me a lot more on the food and drink. uh One thing led to another, and here I
Yeah.
am.
Is there a special day, for example, where you, I would say, pass that door of that path was your main gig, and is there a specific day, or it was something very progressive and um,
Yeah, there was a specific day. It's actually, I guess, coming up. The beginning of August, 2011, was when my job moved out of town, and I decided that I wasn't going to go with it.
mm,
The company I had worked for almost 8 years had decided that they were going to move my entire department out of state to an area I absolutely had no interest in going to. Um, and I took it as an opportunity to spend time focusing on trying to do this. So they thankfully gave us about a year, a little more than a year of warning. I mean, they wanted us to go up and move with them, but that was never going to happen for me. And so I was able to use that time to focus on developing my work, developing my skills, um, connecting with more people, um, you know, photographing more and meeting more people who would be interested in having me work for them. And yeah, I mean that was that was really it. It was the first week of August. So I guess it's coming up pretty soon. When I was a free man, so to speak. And insofar as anybody who works for themselves is ever actually free. Um, but yeah, and um, that
So
was some time
13
ago now.
years ago, in
Yeah,
a few days.
yeah.
Cool. And so it was already food folk, cuisine, or you had already identified that specialty, or at that time, or
Sort of. I mean, I did some other things. I photographed a lot of events and a lot of other types of things, but it was pretty clear early on that my main areas of interest were in food and hospitality and entertainment and that sort of thing. Those were always the areas that I sort of focused on the most and where I had the most sort of traction. I did a lot of music initially as well, but there are a lot of issues with the way that artists in general, including the musicians, are treated by the big companies, and so it just wasn't viable, and it just didn't make sense to go that way. But it was fine because I was always much more excited about food and spending time with the people who work in hospitality than I was in anything else.
okay, cool. What are your favorite fields? I don't know, color, texture, people, places.
I mean, it always comes down to people for me. I mean, I don't. People call me a food photographer as a sort of shorthand, but I do photograph food. Specifically, I photograph cookbooks. I cover food in a lot of areas, um, but it's really about the people. It's about the chefs. It's about the history and the story, the culture behind all of it.
What are your favorite fields in photography? Color, texture, people, and if you remind the
Ah,
question.
right. So fields meaning subject matter. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so I'm known as a food photographer, but I feel like that's more of a shorthand. I the things that I photograph, whether they're events or this, or editorial or any of those things, certainly surround food. But for me, food is all just a gateway to connecting with people. So I do a lot of portraiture. I see even photographing food as being a part of conveying the story of a culture, of people, of background, of an experience. And so I'm, technically a food photographer, but like it is always it really comes back to spending time with and understanding people and their stories, their history, their culture. That's really what it's about for me. And as such, like I've been spending a lot more time thinking about portraiture and thinking about people in one way or the other and working with them more directly.
Great. I'm following you on Instagram. You are Ultra Clay. There's plenty of people following you. And I always recognize your shots in my flux.
Awesome.
I always know that it's a picture from you, even if I've got plenty of pictures and photographs in my Instagram flux. I think you have a special kind of light, I would say. There's some, you have your signature, I would say. Do you know what it is? Do you know what is making a picture of you?
I don't know, actually. I mean, I recognize my work as mine, not just because I remember photographing it, but I've always had a hard time sort of defining it in a way that, explains what it is. I just sort of, I have a perspective on how I appreciate light and how I think about light, and it transfers into what I'm photographing. It's actually interesting because, I've always just I've really always just been about capturing things and my images in natural light and existing light. And so in the last few years, I have been teaching myself and learning more about creating light and creating and using lighting equipment and that sort of thing. And I find it to be, it's both fascinating and frustrating because so much of how I think about light is based on the light that's there or light that I see in places. And so trying to recreate it or learning to recreate it when I can't always describe it myself can be challenging, but it's been a fun exercise, and I've started integrating it more into the work that I do. Yeah, I mean, personally, I want my work to feel real, and that's about food and people and whatever. I want it to feel like my perspective on the reality of a situation. We're in a age where, I mean, obviously, there's AI and all of that, but even beyond that, there are a lot of different photographers who create like a sort of surreality in how they construct things and how they use light to make things a little bit more than real. And yeah, I mean, I want things to feel natural, and I want them to feel like, you could walk into a room and that's, it's a moment, it's a space and time, right? And it's like you could just be there. When I'm in a kitchen with chefs or cooks or whomever, I want the viewer of the photo to feel like they're in there with them, that they're in that space. And so, the way I feel like I capture things and that I see things, is as much as possible a translation of being there, or my version of being there, or seeing it from my point of view.
So my question is maybe strange, but do you think you are more a witness or a shower? I don't even know if it's Englishly correct, but do you think that you are witnessing or that you show people to other people?
Yeah, I think I understand the question. Yeah, I think I guess I do think of it more as I'm witnessing what is happening and sharing that rather than, I'm creating something or
Mhm.
putting something together that I'm showing to the world. Like I want my work to represent as much the creators and the people there as anything else. More so than it being about me or about my, or about my eye or whatever. It's more about like, this is something that somebody put a lot of work and thought and creativity into. Uh, if it's if it's a restaurant, if it's a dish, if it's just people in the kitchen or people on a farm, like I want to capture the emotion and the feeling of the people there and the feeling of being in the middle of that.
Okay, great. I definitely think that you have understood my strange question.
Okay.
uh, um, who are your favorite photographers, please? Or maybe you don't have, but
Yeah, no, I have a number of photographers that I look up to and whose work I not aspire to, but aspire to be able to make similar or work on that sort of scale. Um, there's a photographer named Daoud Bey who's based in Chicago. He's from New York as well. He's just retired professor of photography, but he's a portraitist and he has done some amazing work in in and around New York historically, around the country, and there are all these technical things that are wonderful, but really, the way that he um, connects with people, I greatly admire. There are a lot of sort of bigger name, more famous um, folks that I think everybody knows that, there's the Richard Avedon and the Irving Penn, are both amazing portraitists of their times. Um, Gordon Parks. I think that those folks uh, did amazing things that like I try to incorporate um, into at least my perspective or the way that I go into my work. Vivian Meyer um, um, is one of those famous sort of untold stories until it was finally told after her death and her work was discovered at like an estate sale or something like that. Um, there's actually a show going on here right now in New York of her work that I'm glad I remembered because I want to go see it. Um, she spent her life as
yes,
a
as a
nanny.
nurse, nanny, yes, yes,
Nanny,
yes.
yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, she spent her life as a nanny, and um, meanwhile, she was making this incredible work, and because she was a woman, no one took her work seriously. This wasn't like a story of she was just doing it for her own edification. She was submitting her work, and at the same time that Robert Frank and all of these other male photographers were out there, telling the stories of the street, the stories of America, this and that. Like she was doing work easily as or more meaningful about certain places and time in that more or less that same period, and she was overlooked her whole life.
Mm.
She has I street photography is very complicated, and people are, I think, poorly, but at least trying to have conversations every now and again about the ethics of it and the way things work. But there's something very, I think there's a, I feel like the scenes on the street and the lives of people who, the lives and existence of community and people that aren't, automatically put on pedestals and that sort of thing. I think that it serves a purpose, and as long as it's not in it, it serves a purpose both in terms of us understanding the world around us, but also in representing people who don't always get a voice. And as long as it's not being done in an exploitative way, I feel like it's very important that that sort of work survives. I spend a lot of time wandering my neighborhood here in Brooklyn and Sunset Park with my camera, photographing street scenes and scenes in the park here, um, and I feel like it's a moment in time, and we're constantly dealing with change and gentrification and all of these things that might happen. And I grew up in Bed-Stuy in this other neighborhood for almost 30 years, and it was always just home, and so I never really documented it. And now, I'm not there anymore, and B, it's totally different, and I've got very little to go back to look back at and say we were there, and this is what our neighborhood was before it became hip, before it became trendy, before it became expensive. Like, this is what life was here. And so, um, I feel like part of photographing and documenting the neighborhood is important, because nothing lasts forever, especially in a city like New York.
Yeah, great. Yeah, it's true. And it's funny. Yesterday I was with a friend of mine, and she was saying exactly that she don't take pictures people she see on the daily basis. That people are only taking pictures of the exceptional.
Right.
And it's strange because our lives are made of everyday things.
Right.
Yeah, very interesting. Do you think you are a storyteller? Do you tell stories?
I think so. I think I tell stories, but I also think I'm helping to share other people's stories. I don't create stories. Um, I am I am sharing the stories of the people that I encounter, the people that I was talking about Dawood Bey earlier. His work, he always calls his portraiture a collaboration with his subjects. It is not him creating a story around somebody. It is them creating something together. And so, um, I think that part of it is being there and engaging with people, and connecting with them in a way that makes people comfortable, that lets them understand that um, you're trying to help them tell their stories. So my work is storytelling, but it's not necessarily just my story. It's kind of our story,
Mhm.
um, with the people that I'm photographing.
Right. I don't really know how to formulate that, but I will do my best. I would
Okay.
say lots of your portraits are the portraits of people of Afro descendants. In America, at least, not you are traveling a lot, so it's not almost the case. But you have, I would say, a special place in that community. As a photographer of, I would say that's my understanding. You show people that are in the kitchen that a lot of people don't see, never see. I would say, in French, in the decor, behind the. In the background, I would say.
Right.
Cool. Very interesting. Yes.
Yeah, I feel like that's an important part of being a part of this community. And this is, I think, one of the things for me is that I'm not. I've never worked in a restaurant. I've never worked a line. I've never had to serve tables. But I've been connected to this community for over a dozen years now, and I feel like I am a part of it. I connect with the people on a level that's not just I'm going to pop in and take some pictures of people and then I'm going to go and do my job, right? Or like go back to regular life or whatever. I'm connecting to them. I'm investing, more than just my work or whatever into it, but actually like my time and emotions and feelings into a community that is not just about okay, this person goes and does their job and that's it. It's about like these people are connecting with each other, these people are supporting each other, I'm helping to support them in whatever ways that I can. We have this group, Black Food Folks, which I formed with a friend 5 years ago, that was about all of us being able to come together to support one another, because whether you're a photographer or a chef or a writer or whatever, we're often running into the same challenges and the same experiences because of who we are and what our backgrounds are and where we are as a society. And so forming community together, connecting with each other on a one-to-one basis, on a group basis, I think it's very important. And I mean, it goes beyond the representation of, putting somebody in a photograph, as much as like having people like create communities. People talk about networking as this very in this very transactional way.
Yeah.
And I feel like the important thing is community and being in community with people and connecting with people beyond I just need you to do this for me so that I can get this job or I can do this thing or whatever. Community is about actually being there for each other and spending time with each other and being able to support one another, whether you get something out of it or not.
Right. Sorry, I move on my question. There's not a easy segue from the very deep things you just said. Sorry. Do you work with a team? Is Clay Williams a big operation or one man standing? How does it work?
I am I wish there was a little bit more of a team sometimes. I wish that I had the resources to pull off a little bit more more support generally, but so far it is mostly just me. I do pull together teams for different projects. Just this last week, I photographed a part of a book project and brought in a photo assistant and stylists and all the people that are needed. And there were, half a dozen of us together photographing about 16 dishes over 2 days. And yeah, I have some people that I work with from time to time, but they're not necessarily a part of my day to day. I keep saying one day I'm going to have time and budget to get an assistant, or one day I'll be able to get an agent or something like that. But I haven't hit that space yet. It is something I want to make happen in the coming years, though.
So you are doing a lot of things, a lot of different things in a lot of places. How do you maintain your vision? How do you stay on the line? I think it's quite easy to be lost in the translation, I would say. How do you stay you, and how do you keep doing what you should do?
I have no idea, honestly. I just sort of, there's a lot of one thing leads to another in my life, and a lot of just sort of faith in, in moving in the right direction. I had very many aspirations when I first started out, and I'm still working on some of them, but others that I've managed to accomplish, a lot of it was just doing the work, and doing the work that I want to be doing. I've photographed, birthday parties and bat mitzvahs and weddings and all sorts of other things that are not necessarily related to the work that I'm aiming for. But I also make sure I put myself out in front of the people that I want to be working with. I try to, I'm in the middle of summertime when things are a little slower, and, I'm making a list of which restaurants I want to go to, which events I want to go to, where I want to go to support the people that I run into all the time, but haven't had a chance to patronize their establishments, that sort of thing, and a lot of it is just about being there and being there for people. And so, those things in the long term make a difference. And I think that that's, again, it's a matter of being in community, and trying to be present, however you can, in order to continue focusing on it, in order to be able to be in a position so that when the time comes, maybe you work with some of these folks in other capacities, maybe you do other things, that sort of thing. But yeah, I think that's it. Just keeping your values sort of top of mind, even when you're not getting a paycheck.
Okay. You travel a lot for work in the USA and abroad. So you are on the road a lot. What do you like in that? I'm quite sure you have chosen that way of doing. So what do you like on the road?
I've liked to travel for a long time. It's been one of those things where I did not do a semester abroad when I was in college, and I only discovered travel in my 20s. is something I really wanted to do and see and experience. And so, you know, for me, it's not just about work. It's about trying to explore and get a feeling of other places. I'm from New York, and so we have so much here, so many different places, so many different people and cultures and experiences to be had. But like, I think valuing that here is what makes me excited to go to other places to find those other experiences and to find, obviously it comes back to food too, to find the food and the spaces and the scenery, the life, that exists in all these other places. As far as being a part of work, you know, there's both the practical and sort of emotional part of it. The emotional part is just like I said, I want to be able to go out and meet more people and try new things and to experience all of it as much as I can. But then on the more practical side, I there are a lot of photographers in New York. It is a big market. There's a lot going on. There's always some other thing happening. And if I am only focusing on what's happening here, then I'm constantly seeing the same things and doing the same, photographing the same people and photographing the same circles and events and food and all of that. Um, it helps to diversify both my experience, my perspective, but also the work that I'm doing, and the people I'm working with, by being on the road and going out and having different experiences and going to different places. So it's not just all the same reference points. Um, if I can, if I go, if I go to London, um, and try out some new restaurants and photograph some of the people who work there, and who have restaurants there and who are doing those things, then like, um, I have both had a new experience and learned a little bit more about those places and their food and their cuisine, but I also have, practically in my portfolio and in the work that I'm doing, you know, not just the same restaurant openings that everybody else has covered in New York. It is both in terms of experience, but also in terms of just representation. Um, it gives me a sort of wider scope of of who I'm talking to, who I'm photographing, what I'm photographing, all of that. And so like it's important to me that like I am not just going to the same places that everyone's always talking about and everyone's the whole sort of food community or media community or whoever feels like, oh well, this is the important thing right now. Um, I think that there there's an echo chamber that happens
Yeah.
in media of all kinds, but including social media. And so if it's all just people going to the same places, then it's boring. And so if I can say I've had these other experiences, I've gone to these other places, and it's not just the same place that everyone has gone to when they've gone to those places. Um, it both informs me and it makes my work stand out. I think.
Yes, yes, true. Um, what is your understanding of the cuisine culture today uh, in the USA, but also in all the places you are shooting and visiting? Um, what is your understanding of the cuisine right now in 2024?
I mean, I think it's a little in flux. I think a lot of things are changing. But the trend that has been interesting to me over the last several years um, has been about it's been about connecting to history and heritage, and representing um, culture that is often overlooked or has historically been overlooked or suppressed. Um, I think that a lot more. I mean, and you know, the hazard is you don't want to be stuck. You don't want to be pigeonholed. You don't want to be stuck in a new box, and as though that's the only thing you can do. But I think there's more respect being given, and more opportunities being offered to cuisine that is not just classic versions of European history or European food.
Yeah.
I think that that's happening in a lot of different ways. I think that's happening with African food and Caribbean food. I think that, I mean, here in New York at least, there are a number of Indian restaurants that have popped up in the last few years that are literally unapologetic. There's a group of chefs, a group of restaurants here where the lead chef, like their company is called Unapologetic Foods, and it's intense and it's wonderful and it's not dumbing anything down or doing palatable versions for people who are unfamiliar. It's just, this is our food, this is what we're doing. And I think that that opens things up, that opens up opportunities, but also educates people. It gives people more of a exposure to not just the bland versions of things, but the you know versions that are much closer to the original, um, or versions um, that are riffs or developments or elevated or whatever, like different takes on classics or historic cuisine, in a way that expresses creativity, that expresses individual experiences. And I think that's great. I think that that's where, I think that's where like the future of cuisine goes. It's by being more personal and not, oh, here's, you know, five absolutely traditional, you know, restaurants all serving the same dishes in the same way. Um, it's I think there's a lot that can go there. A lot of places that can go, I should say, um, because everyone's got their own palate and everyone's got their own experience and everyone's got their own background or connection to those things.
Great. What is the biggest challenge you face daily as a portraitist? What is the most difficult?
Mm. Um, I mean, honestly, it's always the business, right? It's always the work part of it, the having to book these things, having to sell yourself, having to connect with people to get them to hire you and to pay your proper rate, to pay you on time. And, those are the parts because, when I'm in a space surrounded by all these people, like it's we've photographed together a number of times,
Yeah.
and it's great, and that's the part that I love. I love just being able to be there and walk around or stay in the studio and try this and try that and all of those things. Those are the parts that I absolutely love. But the part about like I the part about having to actually make excuse me make it work, to make it happen, to book them, to deal with all of that stuff. That's the part that's the hardest. I rented out a photo studio from the spring, from February, March, and I love having the space, but and it's funny because people congratulated me on having the space, and all I could think of is, I mean, this is just another thing I have to pay for every month, and it means that I have to constantly put it out there that like, hey, I have this space. Hey, who
Yeah.
wants to book headshots? Hey, and everyone's New York is like Paris. Everybody's busy all the time, and
Yeah.
so I have a lot of well-meaning friends and colleagues and acquaintances who are like, oh my God, I would love to do that, but then when it comes to actually like making it happen, having people come in, having people actually like book appointments, it gets complicated. And I think it's been almost a month and a half since I've done a portrait shoot there. I've used it for some other things, but not nearly as much as I'd like to. And you have to manage social media. You have to go out there and market it and tell everyone you're doing it and remind them that again and remind them again, but don't be annoying. And like, it's a
hustle.
Yeah, it's a hustle. It's work. It's business, and that's the part that's the most complicated and the most like annoying to have to deal with, because I'd love to just be able to go there a couple times a week and have shoots scheduled where people are going to come in and we're going to spend an hour together, trying out things and trying different outfits and playing with backdrops and trying to do a Richard Avedon sort of thing or a Irving Penn sort of thing or something along those lines. But you have to actually get people to come in the door.
Yeah.
And that's a whole other job.
I understand. And what is your greatest pleasure?
Oh, easy. I mean, that is spending time with with people over a table, over drinks, over food, getting to know people better, getting to experience, food and drink and places and together, getting to have that relaxed atmosphere and the feeling of comfort of togetherness. More than anything else.
Cool. Can you share a defining moment when you felt you had found your calling? Do you remember the day or the moment where you said, "Oh yes, I want to do photography. That's my stuff."
I don't think so.
You don't remember a specific photography, for example, someone told you, "Oh, that's beautiful, I love it," or something like that?
No, I just sort of, it's like I said earlier, I just sort of moved in this direction. And, honestly, I didn't know if it was ever going to work out. And so, when I left my job or my job left town, I said, okay, well, I'm going to do this until it doesn't work anymore. And, I had some other side work and some other things, and then those things fell away. And it's like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to just keep doing this until for as long as I can. And, I think it was the opposite of being like making a decision. It was, it was years later. It was like 2017, 18, 19 when I realized, oh, I'm not new anymore. I'm not, I realized that I wasn't new. I wasn't just here until it doesn't work out. I was established, that like I had people coming to me asking me questions about how to make it. And I was always very confused when people would ask me that, because I was like, I don't know. I've barely made it. I'm not sure that I've made it, right? But yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I just did a photo shoot, or rather, Bon Appetit magazine just came out with a new issue that has my first photo shoot for them in there. And the editor who brought me in, the visuals editor, is a guy named Mark Williams, no relation. And he, like, I was introduced to him years ago when he was still in school. And, the chef who had met him from some various things, said, oh yeah, he's trying to learn, about the industry, about photography and all this stuff. Do you mind talking to him at some point? And he was asking me about like how I got where I was. And I was like, I don't know, where am I? And I've always had a sort of policy of, if people want to talk to me about whatever it is, about the industry, about any of that stuff, I'm always happy to have a conversation. And, he came up to New York. He's based in Philly, came up to New York and shadowed me at a photography, at an event that I was photographing. And, he took some photos and he was like, yeah, this is, for one of the first times I'm trying out food photography. And years later, he became a photo editor, a visuals editor at Bon Appetit. And, and he reached out to me and was like, yeah, I'm doing this now. Like, I'd love to work together sometime. And like, it took a while before there was something that made sense for my work and all that. But, it's things like that, those moments of just being able to help somebody else the way that I was helped when I was starting out. So I think if anything, it was moments like that are about being able to realizing I'm in a position where I can help people the way that folks helped me when I was starting out.
That's cool. And yeah, it's nice to see people evolving around also, and to be able at the time to help someone, and that person after that can send back the elevator and stuff. Yeah, I really like that kind of things. What's your ultimate dream as a photographer? You have all the money you want, all the gear you want, all the location, even you can go to the past or the future. What is the shoot you want to take?
Oh wow. I mean, that's a lot right there. I will just stick for the nearer future, a smaller scale. Something I've been wanting to do for a little while is to spend more time sort of in residency, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. There are a number of locations. Paris, excuse me, Paris being one of them.
It would be cool. Yeah, you are welcome in Paris.
That's right. Thank you.
It would be nice.
I would love it. But places where I can I can go and spend, a month, 6 weeks, something like that, um, just sort of being there and getting to know the community and working with people locally and um, building work, but also connecting more, right? Uh, Last year, we spent a decent amount of time in Lisbon. Um, I would love to go back there and spend like a longer time with a sort of split focus of being able to connect with people and sort of build community, but also to be able to work on a project, work on a series, maybe photographing the people who are based there, the people who are in the community there, sort of share those stories in a way that is a little bit more of a longer term thing than just single assignments or a couple photo shoots here and there. Um, New Orleans is another place I've wanted to go to spend time. Um, I know a number of people there, and there's a great community um, in that area, and I'd love to be able to, to spend more than just, okay, I'm here for a couple days. I'm going to
Mhm.
see as many people as possible, and then, and then I'm on the road again. Being able to do a month somewhere or more. Um, we have um, a deep connection with Philadelphia, and I haven't gotten a chance to spend as much time there lately. But I know a lot of people down there, and I would love to be able to spend some more time
I've
there.
noticed that
Yeah,
you
yeah,
knew a lot of people there.
yeah.
I was
It's
lucky
the
enough to
second
be
home.
with you. Yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah,
a great place.
it is.
Okay, great. Can you talk about your daily routine, if you have one? What is a day in the life of Clay Williams?
Oh, I have no idea. It's so different. It depends on so many things. You know, uh, I between the travels and assignments or work or whatever, there's everything is so different from day to day that it can be a little hard for me to pin down a set routine. Um, some days I'm getting up before dawn to go and catch a plane. Some days I am running all over the city trying to photograph assignments. And then some days are like the last couple days where I am finally home after, being on the road for a while, and I'm just trying to catch up on my photo edits and, getting work done. It was a rainy couple of days here in New York for the last few days, and it was great because uh, part of me feels like it's summertime. I should be out. I should, get out and enjoy the time. But I also, I have a bunch of work that is due soon, and I need to get it done. And so, um, you know, locking myself in the house to get through all of that, sometimes is totally necessary. Uh, so yeah, it can be different from day to day by a lot.
Okay. What is a good day for you?
Um, a good day, how? Just like what's an ideal day,
Yeah,
or
you know that kind of day you say, oh, it was a good day today.
right, right. Um, I mean, a sort of, you know, more relaxed day is usually something along the lines of, um, getting up in the morning and working on the emails and photo editing and all of that stuff, um, and then walking around my neighborhood a little bit and grabbing lunch and going to my local, which is a sort of cafe and wine bar, and spending a little time in the sun, um, with a drink and hopefully some good company. Maybe Tammy joins me, or um, that's my wife Tammy,
Salut, Tammy.
or she sends her love as well, by the way. Or folks from the neighborhood or that sort of thing. Um, yeah, I mean that's pretty low key. A lot of times it'll uh, a really good day is getting out, and I've been thinking about this lately because it's not vacation for me, but it's still a little bit of downtime here and there. New York is beautiful in the summer, a little hotter than we need all the time, but I still appreciate it over the winter. And so there are places like Governor's Island, or take where you can take a ferry and go out there
Yeah,
and
it's a
spend the
nice place.
afternoon in a hammock. Um, you know, um, I really just want to be able to. A good day really involves being able to spend some time enjoying New York, eating good food, seeing friends, um, um, no matter what the specifics are. For me, hopefully, I get a chance to take a few photos, whether for work or play in the process.
Cool. That's an exercise I've done with every guest. Give me 3 tools you can't live without.
3 what?
Tools.
Oh, I mean, my camera, obviously.
Yeah, I would be surprised that you don't say a camera.
Right. Um, yeah, I mean, definitely my camera. And then, I mean, does the stove count? Because
Of course, you can
yeah,
pick what you want.
yeah, absolutely. So yeah, my camera, my stove. I do like to cook. I rarely photograph what I cook. I tried to, even during lockdown and COVID, and it just never really works out, to be able to juggle those things at the same time. Um, and then I don't know if I can't live without it, but a new thing that I've been enjoying is the city bike rentals here in New York.
Cool.
Being able to get around the city on the bike has been fun, and this is definitely something I have lived without for some time now. But I've been enjoying a lot. Just the opportunity to be able to hop on a bike and find myself in Prospect Park doing a loop or two, or get to a museum, or go and meet somebody in another neighborhood, or drop off film, or any of those things. Um, it's it's been fun. It's new, but I'm enjoying it.
That's cool. And I think you are the first guest who talk about bike, and that's a great answer, a great tool.
Awesome.
Thank you. So now the question:
Okay.
what is your greatest personal achievement?
Oh, good Lord. I have no idea. Um,
Any category. I don't. Maybe not work. You. What pop in your mind when I say greatest personal achievement?
wow. Um, I don't know. I mean, achievement. I mean, you know, I won a James Beard Award last year, and that means a lot to me. But I feel like, I mean, and of course, this is all, as we've discussed, I'm an American, and so it's always going to come back to to being about work in one way or the other. Um, but um, Yeah, I mean, I think that this year, I was working on my birthday, um, and the James Beard Awards happened over the weekend of my birthday in June last month, and um, I mean, it's not an achievement exactly, but I hosted this gathering that weekend for this group for Black food folks, and I mean, I was working, I was hosting, I was taking pictures, I was doing all the stuff, but but word got out that it had been my birthday that weekend, and uh, this room full of, I don't know, 200 people started singing "Happy Birthday," the Stevie Wonder version, of course, to me, and I don't know if that's an
Oh
achievement
yes,
exactly,
yes,
but
the
it
best
felt,
kind, I think.
yeah, it
Pierce,
felt,
Pierce achievement.
yeah,
Yeah, that's great.
it felt like it felt it meant a lot to me to have this room full of people, to feel the love from this room full of people, and it made me feel like I'm I'm doing something right to uh, to be able to be in that space and to feel that much love. So yeah, I think that's I think that's right.
Yeah, that's cool. So that's this interview aim to that question. It's about your knowledge. What lesson have you learned from your professional experience, and what are your nuggets of wisdom? What do you have understood? What can you share for I don't know, people who want to do what we do, people who try to do something creative in their life? What do you have understand?
Um, I don't know. I mean, I guess I beat the same drum for everything more or less, which is whatever you're doing, community is the most important part. Um, I think that I think in any space, um, when I worked in IT, I worked at a magazine company, um, and I had a boss for a time there who was very much, you know, he carries a clipboard. He's very much about sitting in meetings and impressing important people and that sort of thing. And and he was always very upset because I didn't want to go to the meetings. I wanted to go around and connect with the people who we were supporting to understand what they needed and to see how things are going and see how we could make things better. And um, you know, and I felt like, even then, you know, it's about connecting with the people that you're working with, connecting with the community that you're a part of. Um, and those are the things that both support you and um, help you succeed. Uh, and it goes both ways. And I think that, you know, I wouldn't have succeeded in this business if I hadn't in the business I'm in, and I wouldn't have been able to do the things that I have done that I'm proud of without a deep community of people to work with, to support, and all of that. So it's possible to be a photographer all by yourself, but I wouldn't want to do it. Put it that way.
Cool. So you have worked on many books. How do you approach the creation of a new book?
Um, yeah. God, they're always so different from project to project, but you know, I'm brought in, the photographer is almost always brought in later in the process. And so, after a lot of things have been decided and a lot of conversations have been had, the author has probably been working on the book for at least 2 years, between putting together a book proposal and writing the majority of the manuscript. And so for me, going in, it's always about just trying to understand where we are, like what they're looking for, what do they, what do they want, how, this is another situation of telling somebody else's story. I'm not going into this to be creating something that is, oh, this is Clay Williams's book, this is somebody else's book, right? This is somebody else's story, this is somebody else's perspective, and I'm putting that on the page for them in a way that is, that's visually sharing their experience. And so, for me, the biggest thing is trying to figure out, the logistics, but also the understanding of like what it is they want out of all of it, and how they want it done. Um, because especially for things like cookbooks, um, it's very personal. It's very much about like trying to convey something very specific, and I just have to go into that with um, some expertise for sure, but also humility, to understand that like I don't know off the bat what they are looking for. I need them to explain it to me.
Mhm. Cool. Do you ever face failures in your career?
Yeah, absolutely. Years ago, chef hire me. I had a chef hire me to photograph a book project for them, uh, and it would have been my first one. Um, and I didn't go into it understanding anything. I was treating it like one of my other just sort of regular gigs where somebody comes in and they say, take these pictures. And, I put my thing on it, my sort of spin on things or whatever. Um, but I didn't have any guidance. I didn't have stylists to help make it happen. I didn't have anything behind me, and I just sort of assumed that the person who was bringing me in, the chef, um, knew what I was supposed to do and knew how to tell me how to do it, um, and it didn't work. They ended up bringing somebody else in to finish the project, who had already done several books before, because it was he knew what questions to ask and he knew what everybody was looking for, uh, and that was the first time I swore off cookbooks. It happens at least once a year, um, but um, but yeah, and so it was disheartening for sure. It really made me feel like I didn't know what I was doing or how I was supposed to be doing it. But it also taught me the lesson that before I do anything else, I need to. I mean, this situation was ridiculous, and if I had, you know, I was literally hired a day or two before I had to get on a plane to go there. It was very last minute, and there was no preparation, and I know not to get in those situations anymore. So that was my lesson, for sure.
Cool. How do clients' feedback and comments influence your creative process? Do you have interaction with the people who see your pictures and the people you photographing?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things about photography most of the time, and not always, but most of the time, is that there has to be a certain amount of trust. People are hiring me because they know my work and they know how I do things. Or even if they don't know how I do things, they know what I do enough to want that. More often than not, they're not going to see my work until after it's all done. In certain situations and books and stuff like that, I will share things throughout in one way or another, but they've got to trust me and trust my work in order to be able to let me do the job. But it is it's a two-way street, and I have to be able to trust and understand the guidance I'm getting from them in order to make it all work. So I try to be as open to guidance from them and feedback from them as possible to make sure that we're on the same page.
Great. So now a question I think very personal. Why food? When from a personal, for your personal point of view, why have you choose food like that?
I love to eat, love to cook. Like, it was just an area that made sense to me. It's always something I've been curious about. It's always something I've wanted to spend time with. It was a natural progression. When I was first learning photography, I was going to butchering classes. I was going to wine tastings. I was going to pop-up dinners. Those were some of my first clients, when I started out. Those were just the areas that I was drawn to, because it's just something that I have a love for.
Maybe in your childhood, or what do you know why you like to eat?
Sorry, I don't understand the question.
For example, I have a very special relationship with the food because my mother is a great cook. My grandmother is my grandmothers were a great cook also. So for me, it's very emotional. I would say very connected to when I was a kid and that kind of emotions and things like that. Is it the same for you?
Yeah, I mean, to a degree, food was always, I mean, my grandmother, was a great cook, and I remember, her cooking in particular when I was growing up. But even outside of just the home cooking, we didn't go out to fancy restaurants that often or anything like that. Well, we never went out to fancy restaurants, but we didn't go out to eat that often, but like there was always like, oh, that special pizza shop or this, particular place that makes this or that, right? There was always like, there was always a little bit of a special occasion. in what we were eating or where we were going or things like that. And so, when I went away to college, one of the first things I did was get to know the local restaurants and the local takeout places or delivery spots or whatever. And it wasn't high cuisine or anything, but it was an important part of day-to-day life for me. And it still is.
Cool. And now we have talked about food and eating.
Mm-hmm.
What's
making me hungry, by the way.
Yeah, I just ate before the interview. What does photography mean to you?
Photography is storytelling, like we were talking about earlier. It is about captured moments and about transporting the viewer to a different place or connecting them with somebody's story. It's it's the way that we see the world outside of like what's right in front of us. And so I think that's key to me in how I approach going into the work that I do is just capturing the moments and the details and the people and the expressions and the food and the environment, the energy, ambiance. Those are things that really draw you in. And so those are the things that I look for, that I think about.
Okay. I've got a question. Do you rewatch your photography? For example, do you browse the photography of maybe 10 years ago, something like that? Do you travel in your memories with your photography?
I've started to, but not a lot. Honestly, often when I look back at older work, I think about all the things that I would do differently, or think of like, I think of like what I didn't do as well. So sometimes it can be hard to go back to older work. Although it's really interesting, when Threads first launched last year, and I was thinking about what I wanted to do there, I did start going through some of my archives and my older work, and I found it was really interesting because there was certainly a lot of like, oh man, I was terrible at this back then, or like, oh, I could have done this shot so much better, or even just like, oh, I would edit this differently now. But one of the things I found was that, especially some of my early film photography, which then is largely something I use more for playing than for work. There was a lot of just experimenting and just like I hadn't developed my skills yet to know how best to do something. And so I just tried random things. They were more sort of interesting. There was a lot of like interesting arty, takes on things. There are motion blurs. There, you know, experiments in sharpness and depth of field and all of these things that that I don't do as much now, because I found whatever thing is that is how I do things now. And so it was interesting to encounter, you know, my eye before before I had the skills to connect with it. And some of it reminds me that, oh, well, this is actually kind of cool. I could try this again, or I could do something like this again. So yeah, occasionally. But a lot of the times it is also just like, oof, man, I was, thinking about what I didn't do well back then. So it goes back and forth.
So, are you an artist?
I think there is art to what I do. I don't know if that's the same thing. I think that in the same way, I don't necessarily think of myself as a journalist, but there is journalism to some of what I do. I don't necessarily think of myself as an artist, but there is certainly art to what I do, and I'm informed by art. I'm informed by the work of other artists, of painters, of sculpture, of other types of photography. And so, yeah, I mean, insofar as part of my work is art, then I definitely agree with that. But I would never, I would never announce myself as Clay Williams artist. It just feels that feels a little too far in a particular direction.
Okay, that's a great answer. With the rise of TikTok, stories, shorts, and the growing power of streaming algorithm, how do you see the future of photography?
Are you asking if I'm going to pivot to video?
Sorry, I didn't understand.
So there's a term that has been going around since I started out in photography, which is pivoting to video. I have no interest in pivoting to video.
Yeah, yeah, that's not the same thing at all for my point of view.
Right. Yeah, it's not really what I do. I, I'm too old for TikTok. I'm never going to be on TikTok. But I've done a reel here. I've done, a little video there. I've done what the New York Times calls a cinematograph.
Yes, I like those. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. That was actually really interesting because that struck me as more of a moving photograph than video. I did a few like that for them, too, I think. And that was just, a sort of still camera on a still subject that added motion to it. There was, in one case, it was, chopping up a piece of chicken on at a jerk chicken stand. Another was, the opening of the bread topping on a dish with the steam coming up, that sort of thing. And I mean, I haven't done a whole lot of it, but like that strikes me as interesting. But in terms of filmmaking, in terms of video, in terms of any of that stuff, like it's just not my area, and it's not really my area of interest. And there's always some new people moving in that direction or doing something like that I don't need to jump into that crowded space.
Okay. And generative AI are increasingly present in the photography field. It's now completely possible to generate a very credible picture, photography. How do you, what do you think of that kind of stuff? Do you feel threatened? What is your feeling about generative AI?
Well, I know that you were a fan of such things.
A fan. I use it. I would say I like a tool, but I'm quite sure that you have a different point of view.
Yes, very much so. No, I think it's kind of an abomination.
Okay.
I'm not fan. I'm not a fan of it. I do think. I think one of the hardest parts of being a professional in any of these creative spaces is is having your work valued enough that you can get paid to do it. Um, I think that I think that the way a lot of AI is used, certainly generative AI, but also in text and otherwise. Um, I think that what it does is it steals from actual creators, and in both in terms of it's what it's creating, but also in terms of further sort of devaluing and replacing our existence. And I think that in return, what it comes up with, is always going to have diminishing returns in terms of quality, because the more of it that's out there, the less original things will be, because they're going to be working from the same pool. Yeah, I'm not a fan.
Yeah, I completely understand your point of view. Thank you. What about your legacy? I know you are still young, but do you take interns, disciples? Do disciples like Jedi Master? Do
I mean, I've never have, but as I said before, I'm always happy to talk to people. I'm always happy to help and support. As far as legacy goes, I think the only thing that's important is that I hope I've allowed people to feel seen, and I've helped people tell their stories beyond what they would have otherwise. So yeah, I mean, as far as interns or anything like that, like I don't have uh, I don't have budget or any of the sort of thing for a team or staff, as I was saying earlier, and so I'm not really in a position to bring that sort of thing on. But whenever anyone asks me about the industry or about the business, or wants to shadow me or that sort of thing, like I do my best to make that work, because AI aside, I think that that's how that's how we learn, is by doing and by connecting and by hearing how other people do it.
Right. Final question.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think photography will evolve in the next 20 years?
I think that photography will still have its place. I think that photography has always had a lot of different sections and areas, and its connection to art and its connection to reality and that sort of thing. Just being a photograph doesn't necessarily make it real, but it starts from reality. I think that however things shake out with generative AI, we will need more of that going forward, that sense of connection to reality. And I don't see anything else taking the place of direct photography as far as that goes. I don't know how that feeling of reality will survive when, everybody from Adobe to all these startups are coming up with ways to create things out of whole cloth. But I think that it's, as it is right now, it's the only option. So yeah, I think it'll still be here. I also think that one of the interesting things about, I think there's the transition to digital made things easier, but it also took a little of the personality out of the way images are, if that makes sense. Like there's a degree of almost too much reality sometimes in the way digital imagery can go. And so, I think that resurgence of film, analog image making, is a direct result of that. And I don't know if one has anything to do with the other as far as the two side effects, but I do sort of I don't see film going away. It's expensive though, but I also don't see just generally photography going away. I think that it still has a very important place in how we connect with the world and how we see the world around us.
Great. Merci, Clay. It was a great moment. Very interesting. Very captivating, I would say. So, thank you. This was Le Métier de Créer, une production Glitch Publishing avec Clay Williams, qui nous parlait en direct de Brooklyn, où il est 4h de l'après-midi et il est 10h ce soir à Paris. Le feu d'artifice du 14 juillet va bientôt commencer et je vais aller le regarder. Merci Clay, thank you Clay, thanks a lot.
Merci.
So now we'll say that I've been going to the top and I got what they not, so I know that they hate that. But I'm on now. All these lanes gonna zone out, and all these lanes gonna tell you what I did, and they twist and they once till I fall out. But I know that, so I keep what I'm doing cause I own that. And I stay in the lab and I kill everything, but I don't ever move, I'm a Kodak. So I'm gone, finally back in my home. I'm working like so much, they swear I had me a clone. Can't answer my phone now, just leave it there, that tone. Ballin' can't beat me up cause I'm back in my zone now. Cause I'm back in my zone now. Back in my zone now.
Ballin' can't beat me up cause I'm back in my zone now. Back in my zone now.
Let me into my zone. Please don't let me into my zone. Let me into my zone. Let me into my zone.
Let me into my zone. Please don't let me in.
Please don't let me into my zone. I just need some time of my own. All these people trying to get a conversation. You can conversate to that tone. I got up on that throne, yeah. So I'm never alone, yeah. All these people trying to box me in. I'm Mayweather, it's on, yeah. Now they ask where I'm at. Making hits that line back. I'm MJ, I'm 2-3, man. I just need some time back. I'm zoned in like defense. My life gone, no resets. But I live my best one, so I got no regrets. So I'm gone. Finally back in my home. I'm working like like so much, they swear I had me a clone. Can't answer my phone now, just leave it there, that tone. Ballin', can't beat me up, cause I'm back in my zone now. Cause I'm back in my zone now. Back in my zone now.
Ballin', can't beat me up, cause I'm back in my zone now. Back in my zone now.
Let me into my zone. Let me into my zone. Let me into my zone. Please don't let me into my zone. Let me into my zone. Let me into my zone. Let me into my zone.
Please don't let me into my zone.
Let me into my zone. Let me into my zone. Let me into my zone. Please don't let me into my zone. Let me into my zone. Let me into my zone.
Let me into my zone. Please don't let me